Good evening, you're watching RTD's English News Edition. Here are our top stories for this evening. Concerning the Orsec Plan report, the Prime Minister presided evaluation and monitoring meeting. 12th batch of Somali police officers honored. In international news, a facet unit expected for NATO's 70th anniversary. Thank you for joining us in our newsroom. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Ismail Mergele, had phone conversations today, Wednesday evening, with his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The relations of friendship and cooperation between the two countries and peoples and the ways and means of promoting and further developing them were discussed during this exchange. Discussions then focused on the main issues on the agenda in the region and the Arab world. It should also be noted that the two leaders jointly addressed issues related to Africa, including peace and stability, integration and development of the continent. On all the subjects raised, the President of the Republic and his Egyptian counterpart, who is also the current chairman of the African Union, expressed complete convergence on views. This phone call by the Egyptian president to the head of state of Djibouti is part of the traditional and periodic contacts and exchanges of the President of the Republic, His Excellency Ismail Mergele, with his counterparts at the head of brother and friend countries. In the major stories, the Prime Minister, Mr. Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed, has held this morning an expanded meeting to follow up the relief operations for the losses caused by the recent heavy rains in the country. The meeting was attended by several members of the government. They have discussed the constitutive and evaluation talks of the work carried out in the framework of assessment of humanitarian relief and assistance to the victims, which was attended by the Prime Minister and Minister of Interior and officials from several ministerial departments such as the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Energy, the Minister of Transport, the Minister of Education, and the Minister of Communication, as well as that of Social Affairs, in addition to the Minister of Women and Family and Secretary of State for Youth and Sports. The Djibouti Road Agency also highlighted the work on the rehabilitation of major roads in the capital and of the cleaning of water on the roads. During the meeting, the minister stressed the need to be vigilant in the future and the need to focus on efforts to get rid of water in case of heavy rainfall in the future. And following this meeting, the Prime Minister, accompanied by the Minister of Interior and several other ministers, visited some neighborhoods of the capital. The ministerial delegation went to visit the various main streets in the capital in order to inspect the work carried out after the heavy rains that caused heavy material losses, in addition to the cleaning of rainwater and also the extraction of stagnant water on the streets. From the streets as well. The various institutions have exerted tremendous efforts in the disposal of rainwater waste that has recently fallen heavily in the capital and the interior region. After 3 months of intensive training, Somali police officers received their certificates today at the Idris Farah Habani Police Academy in Negad. This is the 12th class of Somali police officers to receive the training within APFA. Somali police officers experienced their moments of glory at the Idris Farah Habani Police Academy in Negad, trained by Italian carpentry and Djiboutian officers 3 months ago. The Somali police officers will now have the heavy task of ensuring the maintenance of peace and security in their country. Today's ceremony began with a review of troops by the Minister of Interior, Mumin Ahmed Sheikh, the Director General of the National Police, Colonel Abdullahi Abdi Farah, and the Co-General of the Somali Police Force. The purpose of this meeting was to increase the qualifications of the Somali police force to enable it to assert its control and guarantee the security of the territories of the various provinces still disrupted by revolting phenomena, but also to combat actions of criminal gangs operating there. who were responsible for various criminal acts as well as serious and violent acts of piracy against the merchant navy. The closing ceremony of this training course was attended by the Minister of the Interior, Mumin Ahmed Sheikh, Chief of Staff of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, the Director General of the National Security, Hassan Saeed Qirri, the Colonel of the Gendarmerie, Zakaria Hassan Aden, the Director General of the National Police, Colonel Abdullah Abdi Farah, the General of the Somali Police, representatives of the Diplomatic Corps, and several other civilian and military figures. Young Somali police force recruits demonstrated their skills. Thus, they proved to the officials that their stay in Abifa allowed them to strengthen their security know-how that they will have to apply in the accomplishment of their missions at home. Then the best trainees received certificates of merit as well as Italian and Djiboutian trainers. Over the past 3 months, Somali police officers have been trained in this area by Italian carpentry and Djiboutian officers. Under the guidance of their trainers, Somali learners have integrated techniques for protecting important personalities, maintaining security, controlling crowd movements during demonstrations, and investigating crime scenes. Commander of the Italian base of Djibouti, Colonel, who spoke, stressed the need to maintain stability in the Horn of Africa. The Somali police chief expressed his thanks and gratitude to the Republic of Djibouti government and people as well as the facilitators of this training, which reflects the depth of the fraternal relations between the two countries. In a speech on this occasion, Colonel Abdullah Abdi Farah noted the role and duties of the Somali police who benefited from this course in establishing security and stability throughout Somalia. Pointed out that the Somali police have gained experience and knowledge throughout the training period, which lasted for 3 months. Interior Minister Mumin Ahmed Sheikh praised the distinguished relations between Djibouti and Somalia, expressing his gratitude to the Italian Gendarmerie, who has been training and rehabilitating the Somali and Djiboutian police since 2013. As well, the members of the Somali police gave some technical and compact presentations they gained during the course that enhanced their capabilities and knowledge in the field of security and to perform their duty to the fullest. They have demonstrated their expertise in the presence of the Minister of Interior, the Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, Director General of the National Security Agency, Hassan Saeed Qirri, and Director General of the National Police, Colonel Abdullah Abdi Farah, the Somali Police General, and representative of the diplomatic body accredited to Djibouti, in addition to civilian and military figures. The Minister of National Education and Vocational Training, Mr. Mustafa Mohamed Mahmoud, has sponsored the celebration of the International Volunteer Day this morning. The event was organized by UNDP and in partnership with the Ministry of National Education and Vocational Training. It was held on behalf of children with special needs in the presence of the coordinator of UN agencies in Djibouti, Ms. Barbara Menzi, and UNDP representative Fatima El-Shah, senior executives from the Ministry of Social Affairs and Solidarity, and the Rotary Club as well. 30 volunteers were mobilized to carry out hygiene in the classroom and the yard of the institutions under the supervision of teachers and volunteers. In a brief intervention, the Minister of National Education and Vocational Training, Mr. Mustafa Mohamed Mahmoud, explained the crucial role played by women and men in promoting sustainable development goals. The Minister expressed the unlimited support of his department, the government in general, and the rest of the parties concerned. The Minister also expressed his deep thanks to the volunteers who carried out this work and to the UN agencies that organized the event. He estimated that more than 1 billion volunteers spend their free time solving problems related to them that they're in their community under very difficult circumstances. The occasion is a tribute to them and their untiring efforts, he said. Torrential rains that fell on the capital on Thursday, November 21st, made the main roads inaccessible. The rapid rise in water levels has blocked all roadblocks, trapping workers in the city center. Thus, at the end of the day, the civilian population was unable to visit their respective homes. To remedy the situation, the Djibouti Armed Forces, motivated by a sense of patriotism and duty to its people, have made available to civilian workers large troop transport trucks to transport them home. Several collection points have been developed, namely the first arrondissement, the Anglais runabout, the National Police Headquarters, and finally the northern part of the UNFT. A total of 11 troop transport trucks with a capacity of 30 passengers each were deployed for this purpose. These troops transport trucks shuttled between the different districts of Djibouti City, starting with Ambuli, passing through Mbelbela, and serving in the continuity of PK-13. Due to the rapid rise of the waters, apart from military vehicles, no private cars ventured into the capital. The constant sweeping of military trucks rang out. These civil-military actions of the Djibouti Armed Forces aim to get closer to the local population in order to consolidate this union that characterizes us. ADF in the service of the nation is the essence of the ADF. The heavy rains that have fallen in recent days in the capital and the interior districts have significantly affected the population, destroying their houses and making them main roads inaccessible. To this end, the Orsec plan has been launched to assist the victims in this context. The Djibouti Armed Forces, fulfilling their duty of patriotism, have spared no effort to assist the civilian populations in need. In the ADF, headed by the Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, has mobilized all the necessary means to evacuate citizens on board troop transport trucks to transport them to their respective districts. The ADF also actively participated in the distribution of food and hygiene kits to flood victims in the capitals. Various development centers, it is continuity that the ADF carried out an operation to reintegrate the displaced population settled in the middle school of the stadium city. This operation, supervised by the mayor of Djibouti, involves the participation of the security and defense forces. Thus, after an inspection visit to the neighborhoods to acquire the lower water level, the green light was given to move the victims to their homes. To do this, more than 10 troop transport trucks were commissioned to move the victims of the storm, starting from the middle school in the stadium neighborhood, following the launch of the Orsec plan. Due to the heavy rains that damaged homes and main access roads, the Djibouti Armed Forces, headed by the Chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, are still carrying out humanitarian assistance operations for the affected populations. According to a well-defined distribution plan, the area designed for the Djibouti Armed Forces includes the district under the responsibility of the second arrondissement. To this end, calling on the duty of citizenship and civic mindedness, more than 450 soldiers from the various corps of the capital were mobilized on Friday, 29 November, in a public holiday in humanitarian cleaning and assistance operations for the population so affected by the devastating effects of the weather. The military high command wishes to reassure the civilian population of its unwavering support and shares their suffering and sorrow in the painful moments. Also, as part of the Orsec plan triggered by heavy rains, the destroyed homes and roads in the capital, the Minister of Defense in charge of relations with the Parliament, accompanied by the Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, visited the Djibouti Armed Forces involved in the humanitarian assistance operations for the affected populations. According to a well-defined distribution plan, the area designed for ADF includes the districts under the responsibility of the second arrondissement, particularly District 7 and its surroundings. To this end, calling on the duty of citizenship, civic mindedness, more than 450 soldiers from the various corps of the capital were mobilized on Saturday in operations of cleaning and humanitarian assistance to the population so affected by the devastating effects of the weather. In turn, the members of the Republican Guard carried out humanitarian and cleaning operations after the heavy rains in the country. Since the Orsec plan was launched on 22nd November by the President of the Republic, His Excellency Ismail Mergele, to provide relief aid and assistance to victims of the latest storms recorded on national territory. The Republican Guard has immediately taken the necessary steps to implement the emergency plan for the relief and support of the compatriots affected by the latest floods. This very commendable gesture was made possible thanks to the unwavering and early support of the First Lady and President of the Unity, Mrs. Khadra Mohammed Haid, who is always concerned about the well-being of her fellow citizens. The Republican Guard units, in close collaboration with the municipality of the city of Djibouti, represented by the Mayor Fadouma Awal Osman, are relentlessly pursuing mutual aid and solidarity operations to provide support to their fellow citizens through their logistical means for the 3,500 people affected by the weather by providing aid supplies granted by the First Lady Khadra Mohammed Haid. In response to the instructions of the President of the Republic and taking the situation under control, the Republican Guard immediately reacted to deploying dozens of troop transport vehicles to assist the civilian population and to transport the First Lady's aid and force aid supplies to the various community development centers in the various working districts that were hosting the families affected by the storms. This very commendable force gesture made with great success by the Republican Guard was greatly appreciated by the affected populations who received this timely aid, since it must be recalled these families lost almost everything in this natural disaster. Recalling that our compatriots are cared for at several temporary evacuation and accommodation sites, such as the various schools in the neighborhoods and the community development centers of the capital. However, the Republican Guard's assistance and rescue actions following the heavy rains of the recent weeks go well beyond this. Indeed, after having helped and rescued the affected and population from these storms, both food and material, the elements of the Republican Guard, led by their Commander-in-Chief, Colonel Mohammed Jama Douali, immediately followed up with operations to clean up the streets, alleys, boulevards, and avenues of the various neighborhoods affected by these torrential rains. These operations also consisted in rehabilitating some houses whose roofs were destroyed, parts of the house damaged. It is with its technical and material resources and above all the strength of the arms and skills of the Republican Guard elements that the affected families were able to return to their homes in the best conditions. Indeed, since the launch of the Orsec plan by the President of the Republic, His Excellency Ismail Mergele, by actively participating in assistance in humanitarian operations, the High Command of the Republican Guard, under the supervision of Colonel Mohammed Jama, Commander of the Republican Guard, has taken all the necessary measures and has spared no effort by mobilizing all its human and material resources to carry out cleaning, mutual aid and solidarity operations. The mayor of the city, Mrs. Fadouma Awal Osman, met this Wednesday with the presidents of the districts councils of 3 municipalities of the city to make an inventory following the heavy rains that caused much material damage and human losses, and also to prepare for the heavy rains expected this weekend. This meeting was attended by the presidents of the 3 municipalities of the city. The presidents of the neighborhoods councils took turns giving feedbacks from the neighborhoods and submitting their complaints. They unanimously congratulated the government headed by the President of the Republic, His Excellency Ismail Mergele, and the Djibouti City Hall for the assistance provided to the affected families, and also reported that the cleanup operations in the most affected arteries and neighborhoods had gone well overall. Among the complaints raised by the District Council were the material losses caused by the torrential rains and requested financial assistance from the state and municipality. The mayor of the city, Mrs. Fadouma Awal Osman, recalled in her speech that the government and the City Hall of Djibouti had concentrated their efforts on the commune of Boulas because it had been the most affected commune. She explained that the municipality of Belbela has not been forgotten, and that the technical teams of the municipality of Belbela will undertake in the coming days a damage assessment mission to the various neighborhoods of Belbela. One of the most important conferences of this year continues under the theme of prosperity for Africa. In the themes programmed for this day at the conference, the financing of the African private sector, ZLECAF, the most anticipated panel with eminent personalities, including the Minister of Finance and Economy, Mr. Yas Moussoudwale, the UNDP resident representative, Ms. Fatima Farouk, the governor of the Central Bank, Ahmed Usman Ali, the managing director of the Economic Development Fund, Mr. Ali Daoud, and finally, Mr. James Kanagwa, representative in Ethiopia Ecobank. Discussions focused on the establishment of an investment framework to foster public-private partnerships, financing infrastructure to improve connectivity, and innovative payment methods for continental integration. The provision of the necessary framework will also increase intra-African trade through a better harmonization and coordination of trade liberalization policies on the one hand, and of the facilitation instruments put in place within the African regional economic communities on the other. It should also strengthen the competitiveness of companies by enabling them to produce on large scale, facilitating their access to the continental markets, and general organizing a better relocation of resources. Second day of this business forum on the African Continental Free Trade Area, which opened yesterday at the People's Palace. These themes programmed for this day included technologies and innovation for the Continental Free Trade Area, how technology is a tool that will unleash African innovation, stimulate growth, transform African economies, and contribute to a prosperous, stable, and peaceful African continent as set out in Agenda 2063 on the Sustainable Development Agenda for 2030. A digital infrastructure for basic services necessary for IT capabilities of the digital economy and the quality of life in a modern country. Panelists discuss the traditional role of IT infrastructure, which is being rapidly reshaped by the global digital transformation of companies in an ultra-competitive global economy, which offers unlimited opportunities for distribution and requires constant innovation. The digital divided in terms of infrastructure and literacy, as well as disparities in access to technologies and the cost of their use, determine the extent to which e-commerce will be adopted, and by extension will facilitate intra-African trade. The panelists' discussions converge to a single conclusion that digital transformation is an essential concept for Africa's economic development. The Kuwaiti mission began its activities in the capital, two hospitals, General Peltier Hospital and Sheiko Hospital. The Secretary General of Health, Dr. Salah Bonaita, visited sites in the company of Kuwaiti Ambassador Mr. Yusuf bin Hussein Al-Kabandi and several executives from the Department of Health to inquire about the smooth running of activities. Several hundred people took advantage of this opportunity by flocking massively to hospitals to take full advantage of these free services offered to them as part of the health cooperation between the Republic of Djibouti and the state of Kuwait. The Secretary General of the Health and the Kuwaiti diplomat were able to visit the operating theaters where for ophthalmological, orthopedic, ENT, and general surgery are performed. The objective of this Kuwaiti surgical mission is to provide free specialized care and highly qualified services to a greater number of our Djiboutian citizens. After last week's heavy rains, the Tejoro region was severely affected by the weather that damaged road infrastructure. There has been disasters in several localities, including Segalu on the Djibouti-Tejora. From the very first hours, the president of the region, Mr. Hassan Dabili, accompanied by local officials, made inspection visits to various localities in the region of Tajora to assess the situation and provide force aid for disasters. The regional office of ADR has undertaken major works to clear the mud from the roads of the white city of Tajora. The ADR has carried out and work on the Djibouti-Tajora road and at the level of Dwelling, Segalu, and also Raisa to improve road traffic. In addition, the protection of the village of Segalu has been reinforced to provide security for the inhabitants heavily affected by the Wadi floods, which have damaged some houses in places. A delegation led by the parliamentary member of parliament Hussein Abdul Qadir, accompanied by the regional head of the ADR, Mr. Hamad, carried out an inspection visit of the work carried to clear the Djibouti to Jora road access on the coast and the work of to strengthen as well the structure and protects the village of Segelo from the floods of the Wadi in upstream. Moving on to international news, NATO is celebrating the 70th anniversary of the organization in London amid controversies that have been made public between the United States, France, and Turkey. Details with Dini Musa.
First 29 members have displayed their front unit on Wednesday, December 4, during the Alliance's 17th anniversary. Their objective is to conceal the differences exposed in the open between the United States, France, and Turkey. 2 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Cold War legacy organization faces considerable challenges between the militarization of space, Russia's return to the international scene, and China's rise to power as a military power. But the start of the festivities on Tuesday was dominated by the weapon passes resulting from Emmanuel Macron's recent statements judging NATO as a brain dead and urging it to rethink its strategy. Not only did he maintain his words, which were heavily circulated by his allies, but he also called for a resumption of strategic dialogue in Moscow and demanded explanations for Turkey on its intervention against the Kurdish forces in northern Syria, accusing Ankara in passing of working with extremists close to the Islamic State group.
A delegation of European lawmakers sent to Malta to assess the political situation in the country expressed deep concern after their meeting with Prime Minister Joseph Muscat. Explanations in this video.
European Union parliamentary election sent on mission to Malta calls on Prime Minister Joseph Muscat to resign immediately. It thus joins the thousands of demonstrators and their opposition on their demands. The case of the murder of journalist Daphne Gona Galzilla has seriously damaged the European authorities' confidence in the independence of the Maltese justice system. This is the reason given by the Europeans who do not understand why Joseph Muscat is waiting to leave his post. The meeting between the Maltese Prime Minister and the delegation was tense. Daphne, who was investigating corruption in Malta, was killed in the explosion of her car bomb on 16 October 2017. A Maltese businessman was charged with complicity in murder last Saturday, denying the charge and directly implicating Joseph Muscat's chief of staff. The Prime Minister is suspected of covering the latter.
Barcelona star Lionel Messi has won the Golden Ball for the 6th time in his history. Details in the following video with Dini Musa.
Argentinian footballer Lionel Andres Messi won his 6th Golden Ball on Monday, ahead of Portuguese Cristiano Ronaldo, who finished third in this 2019 edition. The 32-year-old Barcelona striker also beat the 2 Liverpool players who won the Champions League, Virgil van Dijk and Sadio Mane. The Argentinian is once again crowned after 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, and 2015. This makes him the first and only player to receive 6 Ballon d'Ors. Messi, who won FIFA's The Best Award a few weeks ago, finished as Europe's top scorer with 36 goals for the 2018-19 season. Although he stopped in the semi-finals of the Champions League, he won the Spanish Championship with Barca and on Wednesday crossed the 700-game mark for the Bulgarians.
It is with these images we close this edition. Thank you for joining us on the radio television of Djibouti and have a good night.